Thank you, folks. Please welcome co-producer Aaron Tartakovsky, you'll recognize from the film. And please welcome the director, Yoav Potash.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. As the credits roll, we'll start this conversation. But thank you so much for being here. There's so much to ask, but I want to start by asking the most important thing. What's going on with this film? Where is it going next?
Thank you, Isaac. I would love for you all to be part of where this film goes next. It is opening at the Quad Cinema here in New York City for a full week. That's in the Village, if you don't know. And we don't have corporate dollars to put this film on billboards or any of the other kind of big money ways of getting a film out there. We are relying on grassroots support of folks just like yourselves who've seen the film and can spread the word for us. So I don't want to bore you. I'm going to make this moment interactive if I can for a second. I'm not going to ask for any money. But if you're a member of a synagogue, raise your hand, or a church, or any kind of nonprofit. Great, because we need you to spread the word to your congregation. If you are an educator, or you know an educator, raise your hand. If you've got a brother, sister, daughter, or anybody, great, because we are doing a lot to bring this film to schools.
4 people, no educators here?
That's a bunch of BS, as we know. But they're still hearing what I'm saying. And we are working with the USC Shoah Foundation and JFCS Holocaust Center to prepare a curriculum for students, 8th grade and up, to prepare them to see this film, to continue the conversation in a really meaningful way. And as I think you can sense from now having seen the film, this film is different than a lot of them really great, really powerful films about the Holocaust. This film, number one, the darkest aspect of what's revealed is actually after the Holocaust. And number two, the way we use animation in this film hopefully makes it really meaningful and visually enticing for all viewers, and especially makes it way more accessible for teenagers and young viewers. A couple more on my little hit list, and then we'll get on to other questions. But
this is your moment.
Thank you. If you are a journalist, you know a journalist, or you are a person of any influence, or you know a person of some influence, please use that influence to spread the word about this film. It's really important for us to get folks there opening weekend at the Quad, because that is what is going to enable the film to stay for another week and longer and reach more people. If you have friends, raise your hand. Good, I should hope you are all raising your hands, because you've all got friends you can tell about this film, and please do. Also, another important group, if you're a member of the film community in any way, please spread the word to people in that industry, my industry, because unfortunately, while my previous film was at Sundance and got the red carpet rolled out for it, we're living in a different universe right now as far as Jewish stories are concerned, and let's just say it's harder to break through, and even for Jewish audiences, I appreciate all of you for getting over the hump to see a quote-unquote Holocaust film. Because I can't tell you how many Jewish people I talk to who say, I just don't know if I can see another. And they have a preconceived notion about what the film is, and it really isn't that, okay? It's not a film that marches you through all the horrible things that the Germans did and shows you the horrible archival footage. It really is exploring an area that's been far less explored, which is that complex relationship between the Jewish people and the Polish people, and the good, the bad, and the ugly in all of that. And we have hundreds of years of shared history that need to be explored, that need to be part of the whole curriculum of Jewish education and Holocaust education. So that is my appeal to you. Hopefully you got a postcard on the way in, but we have them also on the way out. You can feel free to grab a stack, bring them back to your synagogue, give them to friends, connect with us through the website, which is justamongneighbors.com, and it's all on here. And if you send a message through that website, guess who's the first person who's going to read it? You're looking at them. we do have a team, but it is a small but mighty team, and I will make sure the right person on our team then takes action to either activate that synagogue or activate that school or bring the film to a museum or whatever it is you're trying to connect us with. So that is my appeal to you. Thank you to all of you and to Isaac for humoring me on it. And now I know Isaac has some questions about the film itself.
I don't remember my questions anymore. That's how you do it, folks. It's okay. We'll get to questions.
The day that the quad is October 10th. Thank you for asking that, and it is on the postcards.
October 10th, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll start. There's so much to discuss, and much of it is also what you brought up here, and it's very true. I want to say that I agree as someone who we show here. We've shown hundreds of Holocaust-themed films over the years, and this has definitely taken a new angle, and it's done in a new way, and it's really a fascinating story unto itself. I guess I'll start by asking. You've been working on this for 10 years, as I saw from the credits. How did this start for you? What did you start with, and where did you go that you possibly didn't expect you were going?
Sure. Aaron, why don't you take chapter 1 of that, and then get to the part where I come in, and I'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, let me just say quickly thank you. I know you could all be a lot of places on a Wednesday night, but you chose to be here with us, and we're deeply appreciative. My mother in the film, Anita Friedman, who you saw, was born in Brooklyn. She actually grew up on Herzl Street. So I live in San Francisco. We have very deep roots here, so I feel like I'm kind of coming home showing this film for the first time ever in New York with you all. And I also just want to acknowledge, in the film, you meet Harry Lieberman, an incredible artist from Gniewiczew, and several members of his family, his descendants, are here. So we just want to thank you as well for joining us. You may not have known you were going to be in the film, so that was probably a surprise for you all. But thank you for being here. Okay, how did we start this? Well, the journey started just like you saw in the film. Like many Jews descended from that part of the world, we went back, sort of a heritage tour, a family heritage tour. And as you saw, we were chased out of that town. I was 14 years old. I'm 35 now, so 21 years ago. So this film has really been 21 years until this moment right now with you all. And so we went to this town, we were chased out, but we sort of made a decision that, these people chased us out once, and we weren't going to let them do it again. So we kept on going back, and as you saw, we ended up rededicating the cemetery. And as we went back and we were sort of forming these connections with people in the town, we realized we need to film this, we need to capture this, we need to capture the rededication ceremony. And we said, who better to do that than our award-winning filmmaker friend in San Francisco, Yoav. So we schlepped him on a plane to Poland, into the Polish countryside, and then Yoav will take it.
All right. Your friendly neighborhood filmmaker. So when Aaron and Anita first called me and said, you want to go to Poland, and explained why, my response once I thought about it was yes, and I want to spend a few extra days in the town, not just film the ceremony that you're doing, but let me poke around, try to talk to the old people there, and see if any of them remember Jews, and let's see what they have to say. And it was in the process of filming those interviews that I now think of as the Greek chorus of town elders, and that is basically all the old people in the film except Yaakov and Pelagia. And it was the woman who stands in the doorway kind of half wanting to talk to us and half wanting to maybe shut the door and hide, who was the first one to tell a story in which Jewish people were killed after the war, and it was clear that it was Polish people who did it. And I had heard about that from Anita, but to actually hear it coming from a Polish person who was alive at the time landed very differently with me, and that was the first sort of seed of this film becoming something bigger than what I was initially asked to do. I felt like, oh wow, this town has a dark secret. This is an important story. This deserves to be a legitimate standalone film. At that point, I thought it would be a half-hour film, but I jumped in, and over the course of the next year, made this little town whose name took me about a year to learn how to pronounce, kind of the center of where I was putting my energy. And so that was the first time the film was reborn, okay? Spoiler alert, it's going to get reborn 2 more times. After a year, by that time I was on the radar of the Jewish organizations in Poland, and the Jewish Historical Institute contacted me and said, you're not going to believe this, but we just got a handwritten letter from someone who says she's an old woman who was alive in that very town that you've been asking us about before, during, and after the war. She's an eyewitness to the murders that happened there. She wants all of our help to try to find a boy named Yannick Weinberg, and she wants to tell her story and set down the record before she leaves this earth. And of course, that was Pelagia Radecka. So that was a big moment for all of us involved, including the chief rabbi of Poland, because it's part of his job also to know literally where the bodies are buried, so that something can be done about those sites, and also just to kind of capture and absorb the stories for anyone who might be a relative and so on. So we began filming with Pelagia. After I was able to kind of put together the puzzle of her story, because this is a story she had been kind of keeping inside for 7 decades. And the trigger, I found out later, for her to finally unleash it was she found out the killers had passed away. So that's what finally made her feel safe enough to tell her story. And it just came out. Her hair was on fire to tell her story. And it came out in all kinds of crazy just order, chronology, because one thing would remind her about another. And it was kind of back in my editing room, looking at everything translated. I was able to put it in chronological order and realize sort of the beauty and depth of her story, which then made me take the leap to say, let's try animation, because archival footage is not going to take you to that one fabric store and to that moment when the woman is handing her this piece of fabric that's going to end up being so meaningful to Pelagia. So we did a test with that for an audience in Berkeley. They gave it the green light. We charged ahead with more animation. I was nearly done then, 3 years later, with this film with Pelagia at the center, surrounded by the chorus of Polish elders, and her sad but fruitless quest for Yannick Weinberg. As I thought I was about to finish that film, I looked back to this little printed program that Anita had made for day 1 that Aaron talked about, which was the ceremony to rededicate the cemetery. And on the cover of that printed program was a piece of Jewish folk art. It was a painting of the marketplace by someone who I soon found out, doing a little research, lived to be 102 years old, and his name was Harry Lieberman. And as you see in the film, we have a little scene about Harry Lieberman that then leads me through his relatives to Harry Lieberman's one surviving relative who was alive during World War II, who's a Holocaust survivor, whose name is Yaakov Goldstein. I was like, amazing, wow, a Holocaust survivor from the town. We've got to get his story. We've got to bring it in. I got in touch with him and his family. Turns out he had already written a memoir in Hebrew and had it translated into English, though not yet published in English. So I was able to read his transcript even before, or read his memoir even before interviewing him. And Yaakov's hair was also on fire when he found out that a filmmaker was making a film about his teeny tiny little speck of a shtetl in Poland. He could not believe it. He was flabbergasted. And he really wanted to know, what are the Polish people saying to you? Because he was concerned that they were pulling the wool over my eyes and my camera's lens, so to speak, because he was concerned that they might be telling a story of Jews and Poles lived as neighbors, kumbaya, it was all great, and his parents were murdered in that town. So in my conversations with him before filming, he wanted to know, what are they saying to you? Are they telling you the truth? You know my parents were killed there. And because of his urgency and because he was a Holocaust survivor, I sent him transcripts of what Pelagia said and what Janina, the woman in the doorway, said. And he read those transcripts. The email went dark for about 10 days. I was on pins and needles awaiting his response. Finally, the email came where he said, Yoav, I'm sorry it took so long for me to reply. I was overwhelmed because this woman saw the murder of my parents. I'm Yannick. And he went through point by point, much as he does in the end of the film, explaining. She talked about Pini, my father was Pinchas. She talked about the boy came on crutches. I couldn't walk after 2 years in this horrible hiding place. She thought this girl was my sister. That was actually the girl who lived upstairs with the rabbi, but it was understandable why she was confused about that because they lived in the same house. So he put all the pieces together. My mind was blown, and I realized the film that I thought was almost done was not at all almost done, and it was kind of the metaphorical equivalent of I'm one of those people who builds cars, and I was building a bus in my garage, and now I was going to, piece by piece, take that bus apart and rebuild it as a double-decker bus that was going to have a Yaakov level and a Pelagia level, and they would move down the road of history together, and at the end, we would deliver for you this same kind of epiphany that went off for me and that went off for Yaakov of realizing they're one and the same story. And so I hope that when we got to that point, it was also a satisfying and possibly surprising moment for all of you. But this explains why it was a 10-year journey. The animation also took a long chunk of that time because it's such an involved process, and we worked with people in about 5 different countries to put everything together.
Wow. That answered most of my questions. I do want to ask Aaron, from your perspective, going through this process, what? And yes, obviously, I'm sure you were surprised as Yoav was, but what was your part in that, and how did you play throughout this 10-year process? How did you help support this film?
You know, we went into this thinking this was just going to be a family film. You know, a family video of this experience. I don't think we certainly never imagined what it would become. And you know, all the art that you see here, this was Yoav and his team. But obviously, all throughout, we saw early cuts of the film. We were giving feedback on the film. But you know, Yoav talks about sort of 3 chapters. You know, he thought the film was done, and then Pelagia came, and then Yaakov came. I thought the film was almost done like 20 times. And then we just kept on peeling back layers and layers. And again, we could have never possibly imagined what it was going to turn into. But for us, you know, we went into this wanting to tell the story of this town, to give voice to all of my family who were killed, 214 people in total. And we wanted to make sure that their stories did not disappear. Because as you saw, they didn't kill just people. They tried to kill our history. They even took our tombstones. And I think for a lot of you in this room, this is not just our story. This is your story too. And I see people nodding because it's probably... Sorry?
I'm sorry. We'll get to the audience too. Don't worry.
Yeah, and I'm happy to chat with you, but I think a lot of people, this is your story too. This is the story of the Jewish people, and you see the entire lens of this period of history through this one town of 1,000, now a 500-person town. So our involvement was we helped to kickstart it, and then Yoav and his team really took it to what it became.
Thank you. I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll open it to questions from the audience. And my question is really, why is it important to tell this story now? I mean, beyond remembering, and most of the people are gone from all sides. And by the way, I've always said that beyond Spielberg collecting the testimonies of all the survivors, there's value, and you've really done this here, of collecting stories of the perpetrators too, and hearing their stories and making those connections that go on here. But why is it important for an audience to see this movie today?
Thank you. I think there's a kind of a list of reasons why. First on my mind as I was making the film was the fact that these people weren't going to be with us much longer. That, of course, was clear from the moment you laid eyes on them. And so to be capturing their testimony and kind of creating a time capsule and a record, as Pelagia really wanted to do. She knew her days were numbered in some sense, and she knew she had to get this story out and told, and she knew also that it was something the Polish government was pushing back on, especially once 2018 happened, and they passed this law in Poland to literally try to silence any claim of Polish involvement in the Holocaust, and by extension, the killings that continued to happen afterwards. And in that way, the film is also about something much broader, and it comes up in the film about how do we examine histories that are difficult in any country, including this country, including Israel, including every country, on this planet. Nobody has a perfect patriotic narrative, and there has to be a way we can look at both the parts of our history that we're proud of and we want to uplift, and also the parts where maybe we should really re-examine or acknowledge some of the wrongs. And I think, in that way, I believe the film is universal, and boy, is that a pertinent issue today. You can see what's happening in this country, and you can sort of go around the world and also, take a look at the same set of issues. So there's a couple of reasons right there, and there are more. But as I mentioned earlier, the use of animation in the film is part because we really needed to put you in their stories to be able to follow them, but also to help these stories speak to young people. And that's really one of our goals. Looking around at the audience tonight, I would say we haven't yet totally succeeded in bringing the film to the youngest of folks, but with your help, we can get there. I did want to mention one thing I forgot to mention before, which is just that there's a clipboard going around the audience, and we appreciate it if you give your email address so that we can let you know when the film is coming to other cities all around the country where you might have friends and relatives.
All right, folks. We have a microphone.
And it's chomping at the bit.
We will.
I'm coming right over here. Just one moment.
Try to make your statement a little bit in the form of a question, and try to keep it short so we can get to other people
can't
too.
Do it. My name is Ron Beckerman. My grandfather was born in Gnivashov. This story is very personal to me. I was waiting for this movie for 10 years. I've been in touch with Anita. I am really grateful for you to do the movie. I was in Gnivashov in 1994. I was 20 years old. I saw the Jewish cemetery that was absolutely nothing. I saw those tombstones be like a pathway to the local church. I was there. It is my story. I'm very emotional, obviously. I can add one more story to whatever you were saying. It is about my great-grandfather named Aaron Beckerman. I'm Ron Beckerman. He is Aaron Beckerman. My Jewish name is Aaron, actually. So the story of my great-grandfather, he was born in Gnivoshov in 1868, and he was killed in Gnivoshov. Around 1919, way before Holocaust. And the story of him being killed is very, very simple. He was just walking down the street, and there were two drunk, full people coming over. Let's kill this little piece of Jew. He was more than 50 years old. He had 8 children. He was well known in the town. He was just killed because he was walking on the street. This is the story of my great-grandfather, and I'm representing a large family of Beckermans. I'm talking about hundreds of people. You hear my accent, they're all around the globe, and we are very grateful for you for doing this work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. I just want to say, you know, I gave my list earlier about all the different ways people can help, and I also want to say Holocaust survivors and relatives of Holocaust survivors, like this gentleman here, and many of you. You may have noticed a woman came over and snuck in a kiss with me. That was Baba Preisler, who was a survivor whose story I told in a separate short film years ago, who lives here in New York City. And I also just want to emphasize that those of you who have relatives who are or were survivors, you actually have a special power to get people's attention and to hopefully say what I'm asking of you, you know, please see this film. It's not, quote unquote, another Holocaust film. And you know, I know many of you are already doing your part to keep these stories alive and show people how they relate to the present day. And I hope the film can be kind of service to you in that way.
We have a question up there.
Yeah, hi. David Goldstein. I'm a descendant of people from Gnivoshov. We met there. Yeah, it's good to see you again. My father and Yaakov were first cousins, and to channel Yaakov a little bit, I can't tell you how powerful and beautiful and amazing this was. I don't have the words. We need a poet. You are. I'm not. But it just was, you know, again, echoing Ron, it was just amazing, and we thank you for it. My grandmother, my sister's here too, Carrie Bloom. Our grandmother was, there were 3 women of the 5 who were killed. Yaakov's mother, my grandmother, Chaya Liebhaber, but I want to take a quick moment. And by the way, there's a bunch of other Gnivoshov people, Liebhabers, here with us, so you have a pretty good turnout from Gnivoshov. Besides my grandmother, Chaya Liebhaber, Yaakov's mother, the third woman, Chava Boimel was her name, and I know from my grandfather's chapter in the Yizkor book for Gnivoshov, she was in her early 20s. She was passing through. She had no connection to Gnivoshov whatsoever. She had survived the Holocaust. I don't know if there's anyone else to say her name and speak to her for her, so that's what I want to do, and I want you to all hear it. She was passing through on her way to America. She was engaged. She had papers to come to America. Her fiancé was waiting for her here. She stayed in Gnivoshov because she wanted to be with other Jews because she thought it was safe. So go figure, right? She was there completely by accident because she thought it was safe to be with other Jews, and she was the third woman who was killed, Chava Boimel. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see a hand up here. I'm gonna, unless you wanted to comment on that.
I'm going to tell a quick story that relates to his family, which is just this. His last name is Goldstein by choice. Okay, here's the story. After everything that you saw in the film, Yaakov's mind was made up. I'm going to Palestine. I'm going to be part of that vision to make a Jewish state. His only relatives who were alive and kind of tried to take charge of his life as you're a little kid, said to him, no, we're going to America. And Yaakov could not be convinced. He had made up his mind, Israel or bust. You're not dragging me to America. His cousin, who was I guess a couple years older, couldn't get a visa to America. So his cousin took Yaakov's identity and came to America as Yaakov Goldstein. Luckily, his name already was Yaakov Liebhaber, so it wasn't a big change on the first name, and he lived as Jake Goldstein here in Brooklyn? In Brooklyn, and eventually told his family the whole story and gave them the choice. You guys want to go back to Liebhaber? That's what I actually am. And they said, no, we'll stick with Goldstein. But that's why in the Liebhaber Goldstein clan, there's this humorous story about the real Yaakov Goldstein and the fake Yaakov Goldstein.
We got one right here.
Thank you. It's terrific, terrific film. Very moving, very important. My name is Jim Levine. I thought the animation was incredibly effective. And I'm just curious, how did you work with the animators? Was there one? You suggested maybe there was more than one. But how did you work with them to shape the integration of the other parts of the story with the animations so seamlessly and find animators who could capture the feeling so effectively? I mean, there are different styles of animation. It was just very well done.
Thank you. So that initial animation test that I mentioned earlier, one person did that. He did it in a style that was cool, but it actually isn't the final style that you see in this film. That ended up being kind of a proof of concept, and that poor guy, once I started asking him, once I told him, hey, it's working, the audience loved it, do more and more, he was like, whoa. And he had to sort of say, I can't do this, it's so much, and I'm really not even an animator, I'm a motion graphics person. So then I set about my search to find the right animators, and I, with help of a friend in the Bay Area who kind of produces animation, I ended up finding, first for Yaakov's story, I found an animator in Spain whose style I liked and who made good tests for me. And so we set that as the style, and my sort of direction was it needs to be hand-drawn. It needs to be pretty realistic in style. This is, the thing we have to avoid is it can't feel like it's a cartoon, because this is a serious story. And we want it to work well with the archival footage, so it needs to be mostly black and white. And for Yaakov's animation, I don't know if you noticed this difference, but for his, we actually would integrate photography and archival footage right inside of the animation. So a lot of the times, like when he's crawling across the ruins of Warsaw, the background, some of it's animated and drawn, but some of it is actually photos of the ruins in Warsaw, sort of massaged into that background. And all throughout his story, we use a lot of real footage and real photography and even just real textures. So if there's a wooden cabinet, rather than draw the wooden cabinet, we might draw it, but then we would use a photograph of wood to sort of give that cabinet the texture. And all of those techniques, I think, helped give his animation a certain look and helped it cut well with the archival footage. For Pelagia's animation, and by the way, that team that started as a few animators in Spain, eventually they got to that point of like, oh my God, you're wanting so many scenes and so many shots that I had to find a company to work with them. And fortunately, I found a company that's based in the US and Mexico, where that whole company essentially is Spanish-speaking animators, so they could talk to the people in Spain really easily and work together as this new team that we assembled specifically for this film and get all of those scenes done. Then on Pelagia's side, through some Polish film producers who I met along the way, they introduced me to a Polish animation studio. And there was a team of about 10 people, all in Poland, who animated her story. And they opted to just animate everything, including the backgrounds, but to use a realistic enough style where, again, it still worked well with the archival footage. When we cut from archival footage of planes flying, and then we cut to the animation, the planes you see look like the same planes, and so on. And it was great to work with a Polish team for the Polish woman's story because I felt like they could really help get all the details right of what it looked like and felt like, and any moment where there was a signage in the animation or anything like that. You know, they sort of knew exactly what we needed and what to do. And also, I was proud to work with a Polish animation team in the context of their government is cracking down on these kinds of stories. And all of the Polish collaborators on this film, whether they're the animators or the camera people or the sound people, they, to some extent, were sticking their neck out and saying, you know, I don't care if the government says we can't tell these kinds of stories. This is important, and I want to help you, and I want to highlight that not all the, you know, this film's not trying to say all Polish people are bad or anything like that. There were a lot of great Polish people we met along the way to help us tell this story. But there's a large faction in Poland that also doesn't want to tell this kind of story, which is why it is important to tell this kind of story.
Whoa. We're going to take one last question, and then you're all welcome to stay and ask personally, but we have one up there.
Hi, my name is Edna Taish. I'm a child of survivors. I was born in Poland right after the war. And watching this film, I'm hearing the stories of my mother. She was born in Tishmenica, a small town, like the town you were showing. She had the same experience. She came back after the war and was chased out of the town. She came looking for her family. They were also in the woods running with the partisans, as in your story. My father was in the town of Kielce in 1946, where there was a big pogrom and killed more than 100 Jews. So, and I lived in Poland until I was 11 years old, and I felt the anti-Semitism, the matzah stories, as you are showing in the movie. So it was very emotional for me, and thank you for showing it. And Kielce was a really big story that not too many people know about. And it's important for people to know. So thank you so much.
Thank you. That's right. And, you know, and for those of you who don't know, Kielce was the largest pogrom of this type, essentially. Post-war, you know, murder of many, many Jews. And, you know, what's shown in this film was a phenomenon. It happened all over Poland, especially in small towns. And Kielce, which was 6 months after this, was the worst of them all.
Folks, I want to remind you the film opens at the Quad Cinema on October 10th. 10th.
Feel free to grab the postcards on your way out. They're on the tables.
Yoav and Aaron, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for making this film and bringing it to us. And let's hope it gets out there.
Thank you all, and thank you to JCC and Isaac. Appreciate it.